Venezuela's leader, Nicolás Maduro, has commented on his recent phone call with Donald Trump, calling it respectful and cordial. Trump said on Sunday that he had spoken to Maduro, but he didn't reveal any details. Now, the call came after a significant buildup of US military forces in the Caribbean and Trump's warning that any country linked to the drug trade could be subject to attack. Let's talk about Venezuela now with Christopher Sabatini, Senior Research Fellow for Latin America, US and the Americas Programme at the Chatham House think tank in London. Welcome to DW. Great to have you on the programme. Given the military build-up that we're seeing here, do you think that Washington is planning a military intervention in Venezuela anytime soon?
I suspect there will be an intervention of some sort. An invasion is unlikely for the same reason your report just said. It requires many more troops than those that are parked off the coast of Venezuela. And Trump simply does not have the stomach or patience for what he called in 2016 these forever wars or state-building wars. And that's what would be required here. What I think he's hoping to do and was hoping to do 20 weeks ago when he started this was trying to show a force, rattle the saber a little bit, and then attempt to frighten the military into doing what he wants to do, which is remove Maduro. He was arguing this was largely a narco-terrorist organization, the government, and that was sort of a legitimate target for U.S. intervention and U.S. military strikes. But clearly he's shown recently that this is really about regime change. It's really about removing Maduro, as he indicated in his phone call, discussing his phone call with Nicolás Maduro. He wants him to go. Now, the question is a show of force just off the coast of Venezuela sufficient to spark the military defection, or are his calls with Nicolás Maduro sufficient to convince Nicolás Maduro to leave? But in either event, it's unlikely to provoke the sort of democratic transition that he and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, seem to aspire to, along with the democratic opposition in Venezuela.
So President Maduro described this phone call with Donald Trump as respectful and cordial, and he said he hoped the call would be a step towards what he called respectful dialogue. What do you see Maduro's strategy as being here?
Right now, I think Maduro's strategy is to wait it out. First of all, I think with pressure building in the United States in opposition to this military buildup, and now even more in opposition to the boat strikes that it seems, well, we already knew they were quite likely in violation of international law. There have been 21 boat strikes that have killed over 80 people. Most people argue that those were in violation of international law concerning the laws of war. But now recently it's been revealed that not only did the first missile actually that took out a boat, then was followed up with a series of 3 other missiles to take out the survivors. There's really serious fear that this is not just in violation of the laws of war, but in the violation of U.S. military conduct. So now we're seeing Republicans beginning to raise very serious questions about what is at stake here and what are the Trump objectives. And for that reason, I think it's going to be difficult for Nicolás Maduro to sort of negotiate his own exit, because right now, quite frankly, Donald Trump is on the back foot. And I think there's serious questions. So if I were Nicolás Maduro, and thank God I'm not, I would be waiting this out. And I think that what we're seeing is the likelihood of a very full-fledged military attack. An invasion would never happen. But I think always on the table were a series of missile or drone strikes against selected targets, including maybe even taking out Nicolás Maduro and some of his inner circle. I think that was always on the table. Now I think the likelihood is decreasing as political questions and even pressure is beginning to mount on Trump. So I think in the scale of escalation, what we'll see is more on the minor side. If Trump decides to go in and take out individual military targets, they will be more focused on military targets and drug sites. Now, Venezuela doesn't produce cocaine, but the drug sites he'd be talking about and targeting would be airstrips and warehouses where that cocaine is shipped from Colombia.
Christopher Sabatini from the Chatham House think tank. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And let's get more from DW correspondent Oscar Schlenker, who has reported from Venezuela for many years. He joins us now from Berlin. Oscar, what are you hearing from Venezuelans? Do they actually believe that the United States will invade their country?
Well, that's what many people are expecting after the threats that Donald Trump has made over the past months even. So people are expecting some kind of strike in Venezuela. in order to pressure Maduro into fleeing the country or stepping down from the government.
Speaking of pressure, I mean, we're hearing that two Panamanian airlines are suspending flights to Venezuela, joining several other carriers. Is that adding to the kind of pressure that Venezuela is facing at the moment?
Yes, definitely. These were the last two international airlines still operating in Venezuela. After the U.S. warnings last week, several airlines suspended briefly their flights to and from Venezuela. And then in retaliation, Venezuelan authorities withdrew their operating licenses. So as of now, the airspace in Venezuela, and you can see it in any flight map, is completely closed. There are no flights except for some few, very few national flights. The situation obviously raises alarms in Venezuela and neighboring countries, bracing for what could be a strike from the U.S. in land targets in Venezuela, as Trump has pointed out several times without much detail. Now, yesterday on DW's news desk, former U.S. Ambassador of Venezuela, James Story, said those strikes could be targeting clandestine airstrips or guerrilla encampments, which the U.S. has already done in the past, together with Colombia, which is their biggest ally in the region, and they have done it in Colombian territory. But he also mentioned that an attack could even mean targeting key figures like Diosdado Cabello, which of course would be a much more severe outcome.
And how much pressure does that put Nicolás Maduro under? I mean, how secure is Maduro in Venezuela? Does he have enough support of members of the army such that they will fight for him? Or is he getting increasingly isolated?
Well, he's increasingly isolated internationally, but Maduro has a very evident control of the nation's military and their support, as well as the other institutions Chavismo has set up in Venezuela to ensure their grasp on power. Without the support of the military or the institutions, it would have been impossible for Maduro to steal last year's elections because there was so much evidence towards Edmundo González Urrutia's victory. Plus, the repression against the opposition that followed to silence any dissent was severe. I mean, it has been a brutal year for Venezuelan civil society and for democracy, but Maduro is still standing strong despite countless reports of crimes against humanity, human rights violations. If he remains in power, we can expect a hardening of the repressive apparatus of the regime. And that's what many Venezuelans feel.
But is there a window here for the opposition to try and make itself a little more visible? Because we're hearing that there is a march that's been organized by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Corina Machado tomorrow. Is there an opening here for the opposition?
Well, yeah, definitely. Venezuelans already voted last year and elected Edmundo González Urrutia to lead this transition. And that was made possible after Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado was blocked several times from running. So she is also expected to play an important role in shaping a new Venezuela if there is, in fact, change in Venezuela. As of now, she is hidden inside Venezuela. She has said she will be present to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo next week. We just don't know how she's going to get there. We'll see how these demonstrations of support will go on for her this weekend.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Oscar Schlenker, thanks so much for that.